It actually I'm very proud of the model, but also very proud basically of how it came about. And this it really started in 1995. Remember the year because it may come up later in another context as well. And I had just moved from Amsterdam to the US to work at the Kind Institute with Dr. Bancroft, who became a mentor to me, my boss, of course, but also a very, very close and dear friend. And he had just moved there himself to become the director from the UK. And the model really was born during our conversations over lunch. We had several, every week we had a lunch meeting, just the two of us to talk about what we would want to do, because he brought me over basically to indeed do psychophysiological research on sexual response. But what happened, and I'll see if I can say this in with just a few sentences, because those were long conversations. But I think what really happened was that during our conversations, I started realizing that most of my research, even though I had thought it had been about sexual inhibition, was more about the lack of excitation, or the fact that some processes can interfere with excitation or the activation of sexual response. So the work back then was by people like David Barlow, but also our group in Amsterdam and other groups. We focused a lot on the role of distraction during sexual interactions, or worries about sexual response. And in our conversations, I became more and more aware that some of that was maybe more about processes that prevent you from becoming aroused. And that sounds like a subtle linguistic difference, but it really triggered this. It was really the starting point of the model, because John Bancroft had done a lot of research on really inhibition, and it was involved studies, for example, where men with known psychogenic erectile problems would not get an erection in response to intracavernosal nasal injections of papaverine, for example. So there was no way that you could explain that with lack of excitation, because there's nothing very sexy about an injection in your penis. So he really was interested in the influence of direct inhibition, triggered probably by the threat of the situation, or the threatening situation. So we put that together, and John really suggested we would focus more research on that, because there had indeed not been much interest, or from a research perspective, on inhibitory processes. So there had not been much research beyond what John Bancroft was doing on inhibitory processes. We knew about arousability, and most of our thinking was also influenced by, what turns you on, and what are the processes that may interfere with you being turned on, and not as much like, there could also be a very active brake preventing you from being aroused. So that was really John's contribution. I think it was my contribution to say, let's not just focus on inhibition, but let's focus on both. And